So the meeting is now being recorded. I will post this recording sometime after I am notified by Zoom that it is available, and you can watch it if you wish at a later point. Then the second part of the meeting, when we do class exercises, I will not be recording anything. You should have your video as well as audio on. Okay, that is a requirement for you to get credit for the class exercises. So unless you come to class and have your audio and video on, you will not get credit for the class exercises. You might ask, why do you need to have the video on? The answer is, it makes a lot of difference when you see each other and participate. It is not just pure mechanics. There is a lot of chemistry involved in the learning process. So it is a requirement to get credit for the class exercises. And once you finish the class exercise, you should submit that. It is a D2L quiz. So you should submit it, and then you can leave. You don't have to wait for me to say anything. I mean, after you submit, you just leave the class, unless you have other questions that you want to ask me. Okay. Tonight, many of you might stay till 9:20, but there may be evenings when you will be done by 8. Okay. So it can be different depending on the evening. All right. I think some people have asked questions on chat. Oh, okay. There is no, yeah. It's basically hello. All right. So I want to spend some time on the syllabus now, and I would encourage you to ask questions. I like questions on the subject matter or anything that we cover here, including the syllabus. Even if I don't know the answer to your questions, I enjoy them because it makes for more dynamic environment. It helps you learn. Okay. So don't hesitate to ask questions. It may be very difficult for me to look at the chat window. I tend not to look at it. It distracts me quite a bit. So if you ask me a question via chat, it would be very difficult for me to give you an answer. All right. So please don't do that. All right. Any questions before we start on the syllabus?
Do you recommend for our computer for in-class assignments? Like, is there a particular IDE or program that we should have available?
Yes, you should use Eclipse. Okay. You could use something else too, but then ultimately I need all the submissions using the Eclipse IDE. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will probably talk about that a little more as we go through the syllabus and stuff like that. Yeah. All right. Let me share the screen here.
Sorry, can we also use NetBeans?
You can use NetBeans, but I will not accept assignments submitted as NetBeans projects. You should submit them as Eclipse projects.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. All right. So this is section 2. Yeah. First of all, regarding office hours, I haven't specified any particular time here, as you can see. The reason is it is rather boring for me to put some times here and then just wait in front of Zoom, hoping somebody will come there and ask me questions. That seldom happens. So what I would like you to do is send me an email message if you want to meet with me. And I respond fairly quickly to promptly to email messages. And do not call me because I am not going to be in campus at all this semester if I can help it. And send me an email message, and I check my email fairly often, so you should get a reply fairly soon after you send it. I can't say how many minutes. It won't be days for sure. Okay. It may be a couple of hours in the worst case, but it depends on the timing. I mean, if you send something at midnight, you may not get anything until 11 in the morning. And I will be available from 11 till well into the evening, except Tuesdays and Thursdays when I teach this course. But otherwise, I will be available till about 10 o'clock at night for you to meet with me. Okay. So don't hesitate to ask me if we could meet at 9 in the evening on a Wednesday. I would be very pleased to chat with you. Okay. And I enjoy chatting with students. Let me emphasize that. So don't hesitate to email me. Don't hesitate to email me for appointments. Okay. This is object-oriented design and implementation and a little bit of analysis. As I said, you will learn a phenomenal amount of material here, material that is going to be very helpful in developing object-oriented systems. I can promise you that. It is going to last a long time. It is not technology that we learn here. There is a little bit of technology always in most computer science courses, unless it is a theory course. But nonetheless, you will learn principles, techniques, and a little bit of tools to properly design and implement an object-oriented system. And the prerequisite for this course is Math 215 and ICS 240. If you don't have either of those two courses, you should not be here, okay? You will find this quite impossible, right? Now, I have to apologize to you. I'm truly sorry that for some reason, the bookstore didn't get my book order. I believe I composed a message that I am pretty sure, but what could have happened is that I did not hit the send button that much. I mean, because they did not get a message from me, but I remember writing a message, and I am truly sorry that the book order was not placed promptly. And I sent a message to the book order recently, and they said they will get a copy of the book, or will get copies of the book. You won't have to worry about the book for a couple of weeks, or at least, I mean, for next week you don't have to worry too much. But the week after, you will need the book. You could also buy an e-copy from Springer. Okay. Then let's get into what happens through the next 15 or 16 weeks, 16 if you count the spring break. As I said, the lectures are posted online. They contain basically PowerPoint slides and videos. The videos are not entertaining videos, no jazzy stuff. Sometimes they are long, like 10 minutes, 12 minutes each. Each file may be as long as 10, 15 minutes. So you'll have to sit through them. Nothing happens by magic, as you know, when it comes to studies. You have to watch them and get the best out of those videos. I'm not going to lecture extensively in the evenings. You should also read the book and any other reading material that I provide you with. And the class time is mostly spent for class exercises. When I say a class exercise, it is a D2L quiz, but it is not a quiz per se. That is, I have to post it as a quiz because that is the only reasonable way of assigning it to you. So it will contain multiple choice questions. It will contain short programming questions, kind of stuff, some discussion, that type of stuff. You should talk to your group members and get the best possible answer. As you are doing these problems in the class exercises, what you should do is have one student open up the browser and share it with the rest of the group so that everybody can be focused on the same problem and get the best solution and then move to the next problem, right? That would be very helpful. It would also help me when I come into your room and see how far you have progressed, and if you haven't progressed as much as I would as I expect, I could see what is causing the difficulties and help you. You are most encouraged to ask me questions about the problems if they don't make sense to you, if they look too difficult, etc. Okay. So part of those would be graded automatically. Part of it would be hand graded by me. Then there are assignments, programming assignments, 3 of them. They will happen in the first 5 weeks or so, 5-6 weeks. They are to help you refresh the material and learn some crucial new things that would give you a sound footing for the topics that come your way around week 6, starting around week 6. They are individual assignments, so no collaboration of any kind, no discussion of the approach you take or anything of that kind for these assignments. I expect you to do them independently. So there are 3 assignments. Then, as I told you, before coming to class, you have to read the textbook and any other reading material and watch the videos, and then you take a quiz. We meet Thursday nights, so the quiz will have to be taken by midnight, by 11:59 p.m. on Wednesdays.
Professor?
Yes.
I have a quick question about the assignments.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like I reviewed PA1, and it looks like that's just a refresher from what we did in 240.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got material out there for Java FX. Are we expected to be proficient with Java FX? Should I be working on that? Because I've never used it. So
Yeah, right. Yeah, it is. We will be covering a little bit of Java FX next week. There will be some examples, and we will. The second assignment will use Java FX.
okay.
We'll have 2 weeks to do that second assignment, and we will be using Java FX for in the class subsequently, and then you will also use it for your second group project. So you will be learning Java FX, but you will have to get up to speed to a reasonable extent pretty quickly. But there will be some help coming your way.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. There are 3 exams. They are on February 11th, March 25th, and April 29th, weeks 5, 10, and 15. And the first exam will cover material that we cover starting tonight, that is weeks 1 through 4. Then second exam, March 25th, will cover material that we started in week 5 all the way through week 9. And the last exam will focus on material covered from weeks 10 through 14. So the last exam is just another exam. It is not a final in the traditional sense. It is not cumulative. It is not comprehensive. And the exam will be on D2L. It will have 2 parts, basically, a multiple choice, true, false kind of question part, and a programming part or a design part. There may be 20, 25 multiple choice questions, perhaps, in an exam, or it may be as few as 10. So it could vary. And there may be 2 or 3 questions in the implementation part or design part. And whether it is programming questions in the exams or in the assignments or in the group projects, which we will talk about next, you will have to turn in everything as Eclipse projects. So you may be using IntelliJ at home or NetBeans at home. That's fine. But ultimately, you have to create an Eclipse project and copy and submit that as an Eclipse project, export it as an Eclipse project. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Then, I found a typo here. You must have the audio and video. The audio should be off and the video should be turned on. That's a mistake. Okay. Anyway, during the exam. Right. Okay. There are 2 group projects that you need to complete. This is what scares some students because you have to work in groups. And I know it can be a little challenging. The reason being, many of you are working and you work with colleagues, obviously, and you have to work as a group quite often. And some collaboration is needed. It is actually easier to work in a group in a real job because there is a supervisor and everybody has to answer to the supervisor. So you are not worried about your group mates causing trouble, right? Whereas that is not the case in an academic environment because if you have 4 people in a group, nobody is a boss. And so nobody is answerable in the traditional sense to anybody else. There is no supervisor. So that can be a challenge. I am aware of that. That could be a cause for difficulty in working in a group project. But unfortunately, almost all the computer science programs in this country require that students engage in group projects. So we are no exception to that rule. So we have to insist on your working in groups. And I have had quarrels within the group from time to time. And what I am going to do is, I will first allow you to form your own groups if you want. But if you don't know enough people well, I will do some kind of horse trading and then help you form the groups. That will happen around week 6, around that time. And every week after we form the groups, I will meet with each group every week. I told you we are going to have class exercises done in groups. So members of the same group for the group projects will be put into the same room so that you can work on the class exercises together, and at some point that evening, I will come to your room and then we can have a chat about the project. My goal is to see that everybody in the same group is contributing. Okay. So I will talk to you if you have some kind of issues with each other, which I hope you don't. You should try to resolve that among yourselves as a group. And if you cannot, then you can come to me as a group, either when we have these class exercises or at some other time, and we can resolve those issues. But if you keep quiet, then it won't get resolved, obviously, right? But I don't want you to be bitching about your own group mates either. That also is not very helpful. So let's try to resolve any issues that crop up, that happen in an amicable way, right?
I have a question about the group assign or the group projects. Are they cumulative? Like, is it a cumulative project, or are they two kind of separate things?
They are actually, okay, that's a very good question. Let me backtrack a little bit. The first 4 weeks, I think, we are going to learn a lot of concepts. Some of it refreshing your material, some of it new. Then around week 5, we will be, of course, introduce new topics too. But then all the new topics, or almost most of the new topics that you learn, you start learning in week 5 onwards, will be introduced through one of 3 projects. We are going to have 3 projects in class. The first one is a library system. We will implement a library system. The second one is a controller for a microwave. And the third one is a drawing program. So most of the topics that you learn, or at least 2/3 of the topics or more, you will be learning through these 3 class projects. The group projects will kind of mimic, in some sense, these class projects. The first group project would be somewhat like the library, but it's a totally different application. But the nature of the project would be very much like the library system. So that will include analyzing the requirements, designing the system, and implementing the system. It will encompass a variety of techniques, design approaches, algorithms, and so on. The second group project will be somewhat like the microwave that we do in the second class project. So they're not just isolated single programs. You'll be developing a number of classes, especially in the second group project. You'll have like 50 classes perhaps. But of course, don't get scared. They are going to be very short classes, many of them, and they are very easy to create. So they will involve analyzing, understanding the requirements, which takes a little bit of time, designing, implementing, and documenting on paper, as well as within the program code. So it involves a lot of different skills. I don't know if I have answered your question to any.
Yeah, it does kind of make sense though. I mean, it's almost like the same topics, kind of just on a bigger scale for the group projects. It seems like.
Correct, correct. So you will have to apply different types of skills to the group project. Yeah. Now, whether you are submitting individual assignments or group assignments, I am very picky. Let me emphasize that I'm very picky on your coding standards. The programs must be laid out very cleanly. Comments will have to be placed appropriately. I will show you a document in a few minutes. Okay, but let's get into the most important aspect of the course, which is, I mean, from a student standpoint, is the computation of the letter grade. We talked about assignments, group projects, class exercises, home quizzes, exams. They all carry points that determine your final grade. There are 3 assignments, 50, there are 50 points, it is 50 points per assignment for a total of 150. 2 group projects, 100 points each, 200 points. There are 12 class exercises, nothing in weeks 5, 10, and 15 when we have exams. So 240 points. And there are quizzes that you need to take before coming to class, 11 of them. So starting next week, there is a quiz every week except when we have an exam, like nothing in week 5, nothing in week 10, nothing in week 15. So 11 of them, total of 110, 3 exams, each 100 points, 300, so total of 1,000. The letter grade would be based on this table. Now, having said that, if you look at this column here, I require that you score these prescribed minimums for each one of these categories. Assignments, you have to get at least 60% out of the 300, out of the 150 points. Group projects, you have to get 60%. Then here, whatever this percentage is, 150 out of 240. 60 out of 110 for quizzes, 150 out of 300 for exams. That is, I mean, they don't have to add up to 680, by the way, right? If you don't get the minimum for the exams or the minimum for the group projects, your grade will not be higher than a C minus, no matter how much you score here, the total. And at the same time, let me assure you that, or let me tell you some statistics. What was the worst group project? I mean, how badly do students do? The last semester, the first group project, the average was around 75 to 80. I can't remember exactly, but it was around that. The second group project, the average was probably more like 85 to 90, okay? Then exams, I have taught this course, as I told you, every year except in 2015. And I must have had maybe about 300 students go through this course. And so far, 3 students could not make 50% on the average in the exam. So that is about 1% of the students. So this should not be a serious concern for anybody. Just do your work, you will be fine, okay? So this shouldn't cause any undue stress, but it does help in keeping some minimum standards for the course. Then, okay. Yeah, if you don't make the minimum in one of these other categories, your grade would go down one shade. For example, you might be getting a B plus because you have scored a total of 870, but if you don't get the minimum, let's say in assignments, then it would go down to a B. Okay. That would happen even if you missed the minimum in multiple things. It would just go down by one shade. I won't apply that for every category which you missed. Then assignments can be submitted late, but I don't advise that because you lose 10% of the grade. Now, something else. I hope you don't have to use this, but it does happen that sometimes you forget to submit a quiz. You forget to press the submit button. That happened actually for the Tuesday section. A student forgot to submit the class exercise. I knew the student was here, but then he forgot to turn in the class exercise, but I gave that student an excuse and allowed him to submit later. But you can have that kind of excuses twice without penalty. And everybody is given two excuses that you can apply at any time in the semester, provided it is a genuine reason. You can't simply make up excuses and then tell me I will have to be convinced. I may not allow you to use your excuses if I think it is not a valid one. And also, after I post a solution for a quiz or something, you can't use that excuse. It could also be used for avoiding late penalty in an assignment. But if you don't use the two excuses, you get 4 points, but that may not mean much. 4 points out of 1,000 is not going to make any real difference to your letter grade, but it won't hurt either. But more than that, it is useful when you get into, when you make, when you have some, make some mistakes that you normally wouldn't. Sometimes I have had students submit the assignment with nothing in it. Like you have to zip your project, and sometimes the project is empty. And instead of losing 50 points, you can use your excuse and submit that project again, which is going to make a lot of difference, right? But you can't use that excuse for exemption from an exam, submitting an assignment much later than the deadline, that kind of stuff. So go through all that stuff on your own. Then here, it is likely that I have made, have typos here, but hopefully not. The schedule is here, right? This is our first lecture. What happens in the second lecture is here. What happens in the third lecture, etc., etc. And no class on March 11th, right? And the second part of this syllabus starting at this point is boilerplate language given to me by the administration. So you should, it contains a lot of useful information, important information, but I'm not going to go through that here, right? Read at your leisure, right? They're all important things. All right. Any questions? Okay. The first assignment is due next Friday. So go to D2L, you will find the first programming assignment posted under assignments, and start working on it as soon as possible, because you just have a week. It is not a long program, but there are 4 classes to develop. So it will help you refresh your knowledge of classes and other programming concepts. And what you should do is submit an Eclipse project. So let me show you a couple of things. Okay, let's see here. Let me share my Eclipse window with you. Or maybe I'll use the desktop. Okay. Here I have the Eclipse window. I have a Mac. Windows, it will appear slightly differently, but nothing fundamentally different. I have a lot of projects. All projects that you submit to me, except the group projects, should start with your last name. Like for me, it is Datan, then 372. You could put ICS 372, that's fine. And then assignment, and then maybe 1, assignment 2, assignment 3. If you don't submit with this name for the project, I will have difficulty finding it. And sometimes they clash with my own projects, and I don't want any of that nuisance. You must submit all projects named in this way. Your last name, the digits 372, and then the assignment number. So when you create your project, give that name. And do not create a module. What I am saying is, if I create a Java project, let's say, 372 sample, and then finish. Do not create a module. Okay, don't create a module. And the project is created here. And when you are ready to submit, right click and go through this and find the export button. Click export and click the archive file here, general archive file, next, and get a zip version of this. That's what of this project. So give a zip file name here and upload that. Okay. That is how you should do it. Yeah, a few other things. You create a class like this, new class, let's say my class or something. I don't have anything specific in mind, actually. I'm just showing you some. And you see, note this carefully. I write private int count, all right? I created a field, and if I save this, Eclipse would automatically format my code. You can see that it is now indented. Or for example, public void do something. Count equals 25. Nonsense code. I mean, they don't make any sense, but I don't like code like this. For one thing, this is not indented. The curly brackets should not be in the same line as this assignment statement. This assignment should come down. But if I save this, Eclipse formats all this for me. To get that formatting done, you should click the preferences menu of Eclipse. On Windows, I think it would come under Windows preferences, but in Mac, it comes under Eclipse preferences. And you should click the Java option here and click on Editor and click on Save Actions and click the button that says perform the selected actions on save, format source code. I have them checked. If you don't have those, Eclipse will not format your code. So I apply and close, and Eclipse will format your code. Okay. So that takes you 1 minute to do, and I am pretty brutal in taking off points for code that is even slightly unformatted. For example, if this was the submission, if the submission looked like this, you would definitely lose at least 1 point, because they should be readable. They should look professional. There should be proper documentation. Like you should put your name here. That can be adjusted through Eclipse if you want, but I haven't set it here. You should write proper documentation here. This class does blah, 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 whatever it is. Before every constructor, before every method, unless it is a getter or a setter or an override, you should put comments. Now, you have done 240. So you have done a lot of interesting programming. And at this point in time, I don't want you to waste your time writing code that you have done so many times. I think you should be spending your time on more interesting things. So I would highly encourage you to use some of the Eclipse functionality here. If I have this field, well, let me maybe put one more, okay. Private car, something, I don't know. I have nothing, I have no particular agenda here except to show you some tricks. So I created 2 fields. Now, if you click source, I can generate a constructor, right? See, it generated the constructor for me. Don't waste your time typing up all this. So spend your time learning new things, applying new things, okay? That will enrich your experience. You can generate all the getters and setters using this. Source, generate getters and setters. See, it generated I didn't, for some reason, generate the getter and setter for initial. Okay, let me go ahead and see if I can do that now. Okay, yeah. I didn't put it in the right place. I could cut and paste, or I could regenerate that. I could, let's see here. I can generate the toString method. Sometimes you may not want to use all the fields, but that is up to you, right? Or I could generate the equals and hash code. See, all these things are so easy to generate. Once again, don't waste time typing up all that. But notice a few things. The equals method, if you just leave it like this, you are definitely going to lose at least 1 point, probably 2 in an assignment. The reason being, this obj, I want it to be a full word. So what you should do is right-click this and refactor, click refactor and click rename and retype this as object, and it changes everywhere to object. What is the other problem? The other problem is these are not in blocks. I want everything to be in blocks. Right. Oops. Okay, now if I save this, they would be nicely formatted. What am I doing here? All right. See, everything is now formatted. Okay. These are easy things to do. It takes only 5 minutes to take care of these little things, and you can save lots of points. But this is not documented. There should be proper documentation here. There should be documentation over here, explaining the parameters, explaining what the constructor does. You don't need to put any documentation for getters, setters, and wherever you have an override, like at override here, at override, at override. You don't have to put any documentation. You can put one if you want. There is a document under programming under assignments called codingstandards.pdf. Go through that. And those standards are important. Any questions?
Yeah, do you want us to keep the package default? Do you have a preference?
For the 3 assignments, I don't really care. But after that, I want you to use packages for the group projects. Explicit packages. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, let me delete this project. All right, now I want to probably spend less than 10 minutes on the subject material, and then I will stop recording, and we will split into groups. And once again, don't forget the first assignment. It is due next week. It's due on a Friday, so even next Thursday, you have a chance to ask last minute questions. That's why I put them a day after the class meeting. All right, I'm going to go through this, through the slides extremely fast. Just give you a very quick overview of what is in there. I will not be spending any time on anything in particular. Maybe one slide I might spend more than 30 seconds. The others I will be just showing you and then moving on to the next thing, because most of those things you should be knowing. But if you have questions, stop me. Oops, that is the wrong one. I'm going to share the screen to the PowerPoint. All right. Okay, by the way, the lecture material for the first lecture is at the very bottom of the lectures folder. I couldn't find a way to get it to the top. D12 was refusing to give me a menu for moving that to the top of the lectures folder. So you'll have to scroll all the way to the down to the end to get the lecture 1 material. Well, I couldn't help it. That's all I can say. Right. An object-oriented system contains a number of objects, and they have some kind of relationship among them. And an object contains data, like fields, and then behavior. What does the object do? They are all methods. An interesting thing you might have noted about objects, classes, Classes are all usually nouns. That is an important thing to remember. Usually, almost always, they are nouns. I can't say that for, I can't generalize it, but I am pretty sure almost all the class names would be nouns. There could be exceptions. I don't know. We will be learning lots of things this semester. Some of the, I mean, you already know objects and classes and interfaces. To some extent, UML. Then we'll learn design patterns, composition, and all these things in great detail. Cohesion is a measure of good software. That is, when you have a module like a class or a method or even a method, you don't want unrelated code. For example, we have a class, and this is a class on computer science, right? Object-oriented systems. We don't want to talk politics here. It doesn't mix, right? So we don't want to talk religion. We don't want to talk about sports. Those topics are important topics, but they don't belong to this class, right? That is the idea of cohesion. When you write code, you don't want unrelated things jumping in the middle. Focus on one thing and do it well. Then the other notion is coupling. If you have multiple things, how dependent are they on each other? We want to have them very little dependence so that you can develop them independently, change them independently. Well, that is what we want, right? Whether we can achieve them to the degree we wish, that's a different question. We would like modules to be modifiable easily, tested easily, etc. We also want to ensure that the code is safe, that there are no potential security breaches, right? Okay. Object-oriented systems or this paradigm is the paradigm of choice these days to develop application software. It improves productivity, and it is much more accommodating to making changes, but it is not known for its efficiency because there are lots of layers of things coming around things. But that doesn't matter that much because hardware is quite fast these days. So, and some people think that it takes a longer time to learn this paradigm. There is a history of for this which started in the 60s, right? This is how you define a class, public class student, for example, braces, right? And if you create a student, you have to put it into a student reference, which is, you can't create an instructor and put it into a student reference because they are not related. A field stores data. It is coming at the class level, and methods operate on fields. Okay, now something that you want to put fields private so that they are not accessible from code outside of the class, but usually you make methods public. Not that all methods have to be public, they could be private too. Now, something I want to show you here, we have constructors, as you know. They get called when you create objects. When you create a student object, you come to one of these three constructors. This constructor takes the student name and student address and store them in the name and address field. Look at this constructor. It takes in the student name. There is no assignment statement here. Instead, this constructor uses the other constructor, and it is carried out by writing this and then putting parentheses, just like a method. This has to be the very first line within this constructor. This, in parentheses, pass the parameters. So you have this constructor here called the second constructor to change or to set the name and address fields. That is a very good way of reusing constructors. A constructor cannot have a return type, right? ToString method gives you a string representation of an object. It is up to you to decide what it should be. Static fields, a static field is a field with the word static in front of it, and there is only one of that for the entire class. Whether you have 0 objects or 1,000,000 objects, it doesn't matter. There is exactly one instance of this. Everybody shares that instance. So it is good for storing common things like minimum GPA. They are usually read and written using static methods. Then classes can be related. For example, you're taking the course ICS 372, but you're actually registered for a section, right? There are 2 sections of ICS 372 here. There were a couple of sections last semester. There might be a section in the summer. So they're all different sections of the same course. So that is a relationship between course and sections. A course can have multiple sections. So that is a relationship, right? So for every section, there is a semester, like spring 2021, a place, synchronous online, days and times, Thursday evenings, and the course is ICS 372, right? So that we are talking about a one-to-many relationship. One course can have many sections. Similarly, you can have many-to-many relationships. For example, students and sections. A single student can take multiple sections, and a section can be taken by multiple students. Or you can have one-to-one relationship. For example, every employee has one social security account, and every social security account has just one employee, right? Or one person, whatever. There are collection classes which you have learned in ICS 240. You can have a collection using an array, or you could use linked lists, or you could use array lists. You could use other collections from Java. Then the word this, you have already seen the use of this in connection with constructors. You can also use it as an object. This is essentially equivalent to our saying things like I or me. For example, if you call this create section method, it is always on behalf of some object, right? So some object says, I want to create a section. That object's reference is in this. This refers to that object. So it is, you are saying I. You don't say, like I don't say Brahmadatan, I say I, or give it to me. I don't say give it to Brahmadatan, I would say give it to me. Similarly, you are saying this object, the object that is actually executing this. There is no other way to refer to that. Then there are interfaces. For our purpose, interfaces are public methods. They're abstract methods, and they don't have a body, and you implement those in classes. So you provide methods for every method in the interface. So student list has 3 methods: add, delete, and print. its implementation has bodies for those three. Abstract classes are, I mean, they somewhat are like interfaces, but they are classes. And you can have some methods having bodies, some not. You can have instance fields and so on, but you cannot instantiate abstract classes. All right, that was a quick overview of the material for this week. You should watch the videos. You should watch the videos for the second meeting in the next 2 or 3 days. Read the material, especially the material given on D2L. There is some stuff on chapter 2, and take the quiz. There is also a write-up on graphic programming, JavaFX and all that. Read that. We will discuss a little bit of JavaFX in class next week to show you some of the tricks that you need to employ to get it working on your machine. That is all I have at this point. Do you have any questions before we do the class exercise? All right.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So instead of doing office hours, or would we be able to remedy things through like email communication with you?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. If you have trouble with your assignments, for example, then I would like you to send me an Eclipse project. Don't send me screenshots. I'm relatively old. I can't read those little tiny things that come in Outlook. So please send me an Eclipse project. It's much easier for me to see it in Eclipse.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, let me then stop recording here.